So I'm Sonny Andrews, and I'm the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs here at Portland State, and I'd like to welcome you, and we are very proud to be hosting tonight's Portland State Convenes Town Hall event, along with KATU Channel 2, and thank you all for being here. Our topic tonight is an important and timely one for both our students and our state. Should Oregon raise its minimum wage for the thousands of workers in retail, restaurants, service, and other jobs across the state who now earn $9.25 an hour? The legislature is expected to take this up when they convene in February. In the meantime, two groups are gathering signatures statewide to try to put an increase on the Oregon ballot. One petition effort would increase the minimum to $13.25 an hour, and the other would increase it to $15 an hour. Oregon would jump from number 2 to number 1 in the nation in minimum wage if either of these measures make the ballot and are approved by voters. Beyond the issues of higher wages for low-wage workers, how would a higher minimum wage impact consumers? How would employers, particularly small businesses, be affected? What would it do to Oregon's economy? These are some of the questions that we will talk about tonight. Steve Dunn, our moderator, will open the program and introduce our panel of experts and our media panel in just a moment. But first, what I'd like to do is just let everyone know that we've come here tonight to discuss a really important subject, and we know that there are a variety of opinions on this and ask that people show each other respect. And that if you want to talk about something else, you'll get an opportunity after our minimum wage discussion ends at 8 p.m. So again, we're delighted that you're here at Portland State. I'd like to now turn it over to Steve Dunn.
Thanks so much. Provost, appreciate it very much. Again, folks, thank you so much for being here. A lot of folks at Portland State and K2 put a lot of work into this evening, and we're glad you guys are going to be a part of it tonight. A couple of things we need to get out of the way. If you have a cell phone, just turn it on silent, if you would. You know, as soon as we get the program started, Aunt Martha's going to be calling you, so we got to get those on silent right away. If you do have a question, and keep it short and crisp, and that way we get more people involved tonight. So good short questions. We have a couple of folks in the audience. Where are you? Chris, you in the back? So look back here. You see Chris and Nate. Both of them will be holding microphones. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and one of these two gentlemen will find you and we'll get you for your question. We also, again, we're going to keep this to minimum wage tonight. If you want to talk about something else, certainly we can do that after the program tonight. These folks up here, these will be the questioners. These are our media panel. These are folks, our experts, who will be answering the questions. They'll have 1:30 to respond. That includes if you have a question as well. Have 1:30 to respond to your question. And again, raise your hand if you have a question at any point, and we'll try and get to as many of you as we possibly can. Are there any questions before we get started? We're about 4 minutes away from actually live program. Any other questions before we get going? Again, folks, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. It's about minimum wage, an important issue for so many of you out there. So the discussion will start shortly. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. They marched on the Capitol and in the streets to fight for what they say is economic justice. A minimum wage of $15 an hour in Oregon.
Either you pay your electric bill or you pay to feed your kids.
Oregon already has one of the highest minimum wages in the country at $9.25 an hour.
It's not enough to pay for education. It's not enough to pay for health care. When the car breaks down and you don't have a way to get to work, you can't do that on $9.25 an hour.
Lawmakers in Salem could raise the minimum wage in the legislative session this February, or two different ballot measures could come up for a vote in 2016. One would set it at $15 an hour, the other at $13.50.
Politics is a very bad way to set arrangements between workers and employers.
Steve Buckstein, Senior Policy Analyst at the Cascade Policy Institute, fears the unintended consequences of government trying to do good.
It might actually hurt those businesses and hurt the very employees that they're trying to help.
Business owners could face tough choices of their own.
Each restaurant's going to go through the thing, do I raise prices or cut employees?
But when people don't earn enough for basic needs, guess who pays to pick up the slack.
That's fair. Yeah. See what you mean?
But higher wages might actually be good for businesses.
The cool thing that happened is our potential for growth has just really opened up.
CEO of Ruby receptionist Jill Nelson set her own minimum wage at $15 an hour. Now turnover is lower, productivity is higher, and her business can now grow to meet demand.
I would make the business case for any business owners that invest in your employees as much as you possibly can.
The question is, could Jill's success be used as an example to argue for or against a huge government-mandated boost in the minimum wage?
That's the free market. The state can tell them to do it.
We see it with large corporations time and again, that unless they are told to do it, they're not willing.
KATU and Portland State University's Town Hall, Raising Oregon's Minimum Wage, starts now. And good evening. Thank you for being with us, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn. We're live at Portland State University tonight. We appreciate you watching and appreciate you being in the audience as well. Oregon's minimum wage, certainly we're the highest in the nation right now, at $9.25 an hour. But many say it's not enough to make ends meet, and that's what we're talking about tonight. That's our debate, our discussion this evening. It is my pleasure right now to introduce you to our expert and question panels. First of all, we have in support of a higher minimum wage, State Representative Rob Nose of Portland down at the end. Representing business is Jeff Stone with the Oregon Association of Nurseries. And to discuss the economic impact is PSU Economics Chair and former state economist, Dr. Tom Patowski. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here very, very much. Asking the questions tonight, we have Mr. Jeff Mapes, reporter for the Oregonian is here. Suzanne Stevens with the Portland Business Journal is here as well. And Lisa Dunn, no relation, is also here, Associate News Editor of the Portland State Vanguard. Thank you, folks, for being here very, very much. You can participate, too, by tweeting your questions under the hashtag K2 Wage Debate. Our esteemed social media desk is over here waiting for your questions to roll in. As we welcome you tonight to Portland State University for this very important town hall, let's get Raising Oregon's Minimum Wage Debate underway. Here's what we're going to do to start things off. Jeff Mapes from the Oregonian will ask the first question. Jeff Stone, you'll respond first. You'll all get a chance, again, 1:30 to answer. Jeff, fire away.
Okay. If Oregon approves this minimum wage increase, we could find ourselves far above that of many other states. Is there a danger employers will simply move a lot of jobs out of the area to places where labor costs will be lower?
Jeff?
Well, I think for agriculture, which is what I represent, it's hard to pick up and move. You have your products here. The thing that I'm most concerned about is competitiveness for the small employer. And the fact that we could actually see job loss due to the increase in the minimum wage. I think it's overused that businesses are going to move to the state of Washington, but it does not stop the consideration for the economy and the very real challenges that small businesses have, small employers have.
Representative Nose, he says he's concerned about job loss. Your response to that?
I'm not as concerned about job loss because I think what we're not focusing on when we raise the minimum wage is that it'll put $2 billion more into our state's economy. That's based on a study that was done by the Oregon Center for Public Policy. And that $2 billion creates demand. And those are people who are going to go out and spend the money that they're making on businesses like restaurants. They're going to buy clothing, they're going to make car repairs, they're going to buy school supplies. And so I actually believe raising the minimum wage, because it'll put money in the hands of low-wage workers, it'll create demand and probably create more jobs and more business in the state.
On a regular basis, your thoughts when you hear this discussion?
Well, I think I have to agree definitely with Jeff on the sense that it's pretty tough for some businesses to move their feet. Agriculture is here, you don't pick up the dirt and move it to another state. And I doubt that we would have, say, restaurants and so on moving across the river to Washington, where the minimum wage is even higher than it is here in Oregon. But you can have some possible movement that may occur because of very stiff competition. If you're competing against someone in another state with a very low minimum wage and that's your main competitor, you're shipping things out of the state. that could put you at a competitive disadvantage. But overall, I doubt it would be much of an impact.
Okay, thank you. Suzanne Stevens, you will have the next question, and Representative Mills, you will respond first. Suzanne, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So critics of the law in Seattle, particularly those in the restaurant industry, and we saw some of those in the opening to this town hall, said that raising the minimum wage would severely impact their businesses. Instead, we're seeing the restaurant industry, they're booming with new establishments opening up all over town. Granted, the wage floor is coming up gradually. It'll go to $12 an hour in Seattle in January. But does the experience of Seattle's restaurant owners kind of undermine arguments against a similar wage increase in Oregon?
Representative?
So, if I heard you correctly, you said that they were all gloom and doom and they were worried that it was going to put them on business. Instead, what they're experiencing is that business is doing well, restaurants they're enjoying customers. And I don't think Portland would be any different than Seattle or any other part of the state for that matter with regard to what they're experiencing. If people have money to spend, one of the enjoyable things to do, particularly in this town and a lot of other places in the state, is to go out to eat. And if you have more money in your pocket, you're going to enjoy, our craft beer, our wine industry, and many of the fine restaurants that people can patronize in this area. So I think it's a good thing, and business will see more business as a result of it.
Dr. Kowalski, you want to take a crack at that one?
Well, interestingly enough, a study just came out from the American Enterprise Institute that looked at, which can be possibly biased, that looked at Seattle and said if I look at January of 2015 through September, the Seattle metropolitan fiscal area lost 700 jobs in the restaurant industry. And if I look at the rest of Washington, jobs over that same period of time, 5,800 more jobs were created. Now, I point this out because those of you that are on the debate here should be aware of this study. And also be aware that unfortunately what they call the current employment survey data from the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, is notoriously bad for small MSA areas like a Seattle area or Portland. And they will probably be revised. So you got to take this study with a grain of salt, I think, in terms of the actual numbers. But coming back, to our issue here, what sort of effect may it have? I think the Seattle experience has really been in the downtown area where you have some very wealthy people and being able to raise the wage up and raise prices up at these restaurants is probably not going to have much of an impact. Now, the other issue is there's turnover, there's employee morale. All those things are positive things that are hard to quantify, but things that should be taken into account.
I want to move on to Jeff Stone now. You heard the numbers coming out of Seattle study. I would imagine you probably believe in that study.
Well, I think I may approach this issue a little differently. There are folks who get moved up to $15 an hour, and there were already folks making $15 an hour at that time. And what do you do with those employees that had been working, got expertise, and were able to go up the wage scale to $15 an hour? Their pay does not increase to 17 or 19. What you have is more people at the lowest wage earning rate. And the problem is what I've heard from our restaurant folks, is that the cost of a new employee becomes prohibitive. And you'll see it at Red Robin, you'll see it at Outback Steakhouse, you'll have the tablets. That is less expensive than a person to make your order. So I worry about the long-term impact for the Seattle area.
Lisa Dunn, you have the next question. Portland State Vanguard here, and Dr. Kowalski, you will respond first. So Lisa, go ahead.
So there's been a lot of talk about consequences for small business owners. What, in your opinion, is a viable action plan for implementing a higher wage that ensures these small businesses will be protected in the transition?
Okay, so directed right at how we would implement this so that the impact would be the least possible, not least possible, but there's always going to be an impact. So I think you really do need to have it as a gradual increase. It's not the light switch that you turn on and off. It gives businesses time to adjust to it. It's also to their consumers. It raises possibly prices up more slowly. So I think the implementation here that would work is something that may take depending on how far you want to raise it. If you want to go to $13.50, 2 to 3 years possibly in increments like that. If it's $15, maybe even 4 years to get up to that level to minimize the impact of it.
Jeff Stone, you want to jump in there?
The big issue for the nursery industry is that we compete against other states who have significant lower wage rates. And that type of competition really is hard with these small family farms. I would add that the biggest problem, and the question that we're not addressing with the raising the minimum wage, is that the minimum wage is a terrible indicator to try to get people out of poverty. 1 in 5 are in poverty, and that is terrible. And I think that we should look at a variety of different mechanisms that draw people out of poverty. And that is the question that we should really be talking about tonight. And the minimum wage is a terrible way to get there.
Representative Mills?
So I think the business community is not monolithic in its opposition to raising the minimum wage. What I hear from a lot of small business owners, particularly the ones that I represent in Southeast Portland where I live, is that they want some certainty in the ability to plan. So I think, as Tom pointed out, if you phase it in over a period of time, knowing what the increase is going to be and how much you're going to have to budget for, that will help. I think the other thing we have to keep in mind is that there are a lot of different things that impact inflation and what a business charges. Yes, labor costs are one of them, but so are energy costs, so are rent, so is the cost of produce. And it's been shown, over a long period of time that inflation is not driven by increases in the minimum wage. It's driven by a lot of things. The economy is large. That's just one. The minimum wage is just one thing that impacts, the business economy.
We have been through one round of questioning from these folks now. I want to check in with our social media desk where we have Steve and Kirsten standing by. And again, hashtag K2 wage debate is the place to ask your questions for you folks at home right now. Steve, what are you hearing over there?
Well, Lisa Hamilton tweeted us, why not only raise minimum wage on corporations in Oregon and exclude small businesses?
Dr. Kosowski, you want to take a crack at that one?
Well, let's take a look. You have somewhere about 43% of those that are under the minimum wage right now in Oregon are in businesses that are under 50 employees. And large corporations, if you move that up to, 100 or 500, so call that large, you still have a good number of people that are under the minimum wage there. And you could raise those, but I don't think you're going to make that much of an impact overall. In my mind, if you treated all the businesses fairly equally, they know what the lay of the land is, that might be a little easier. But having said that, there are states that have exactly that kind of proposal, where there's a much lower rate for small businesses, a much higher rate for larger businesses. And the idea is that supposedly a larger corporation has higher profit margins. They would be able to either have the ability to pass it on at higher prices or be able to absorb that cost.
I don't want to keep you guys out of it, but I want to get our audience involved now. If that's okay, we do a very patient audience this evening. Thank you, folks, again, for being here. Steve Baker standing by. What's your question, sir?
Hi, my name is Corey Knudsen. This is for anybody on the panel. I was hearing a lot about restaurants and how it would affect the workers and the business owners there, but I was wondering how will it affect other low-wage workers, both workers and business owners?
Very good question, Jeff Stone. You want to talk on that one?
The big issue, I want to make sure I answer your question. The impact of the minimum wage on small employers, they have to make the decision whether or not they're going to continue to grow, to try to continue to employ folks. The small coffee shop that's near my house, I asked this very question. I go there religiously every morning. And I asked him, what would happen if the minimum wage was raised to $13.50 or $15? He said, I have 3 employees, and I may not be able to keep them because I would do it myself, and I couldn't afford to keep the coffee shop open the way that is. Now, people may not care about the coffee shop, but that's the small employer. And so we really want to try to find ways about what's the question that we're asking. The question that we should be asking is, how do we solve poverty? And how do we get unemployed and underemployed people employed? I would go raise the national minimum wage. I would get on a plane with Representative Nose tomorrow and go raise the national minimum wage to $10.80. That's a proposal. You can laugh, it's all right. You can go to 1080, you can go to 1080, and that would level the playing field across all the people who compete against other states. I'm not saying that 1080 is easy to live on, but what I am saying is that there are ways that you can get at this issue and pull people out of poverty. More education will pull people out of poverty. 84%.
I'll give Representative Mills a chance to jump in here. Representative, he's talking about 1080 nationwide. Give me your thoughts on that.
So right now, a minimum wage at $9.25 an hour in the state of Oregon, if you work full-time, 40 hours a week, that means you're earning $19,200 a year, right? And we know that nowhere in the state of Oregon is it possible to pay your rent, put gas in your car, or pay for public transportation, put food on the table, or pay for school supplies if you've got to raise a child on that wage, right? And so, to the question earlier about, we've talked about restaurants, but what about other small businesses? I think if you have a minimum wage that's just for large businesses and then a reduced minimum wage for smaller businesses, while it may help them a little bit initially, you got to remember they're going to be competing for workers who are going to go to work for those corporations that are asked to pay a higher minimum wage. And I think in the short run, it doesn't really help them at all. What having a high enough minimum wage does is it puts money in the hands of consumers who can then spend the money they earn in the businesses in their community, and then it levels the playing field so that all businesses who make thin margins and don't have a big profit margin are competing for workers in the same way, and they're not competing based on the lowest wage, but on the products they put out there. I just think it would be better for everybody if we had a high enough base wage.
I want to go back to the audience now. Chris Slido, you knew I was going to put you to work, so who do you have there?
Hi, my name is Jamie Hartridge. And given that multiple studies, the Alliance for a Just Society, the University of Washington Self-Sufficiency Study, the National Low Income Housing Coalition Study, the MIT Living Wage Calculator, all show that at least $15 an hour is what's needed to bring workers in Oregon out of poverty. And given that taxpayers would save $1.7 billion in safety net costs if we had a $15 minimum wage, why wouldn't you support raising the
And actually, a very good question. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Kowski, because he's saying that's what's needed to pull Oregonians out of poverty. Is that correct?
Well, the tough part here is how this thing would roll out. If you raise it up to $15, there wasn't a single job that was lost because of this, because of small businesses and so on that saw their costs going up, then we would have incomes going up. There's a CBO study from the Congressional Budget Office that takes a look and has an interesting, it comes to sort of your conclusion, but it's a little different. It says, we think there's going to be some job losses. Not a lot, but there will be job losses if we raise up the minimum wage. But at the same time, there's going to be increases in incomes in the country because those that are still working will have raised up their wages, more so than the lost incomes of those that are unemployed. And then on top of it, they say on net, they think poverty will come down. So I think you're in the right direction. I think your argument is too strong of all the positives that may happen. But I think overall, I think you do probably get poverty down a little bit, but you have to live with possibly a bit more higher unemployment than there was before.
I want to get as many audience members as I possibly can. Nate Baker, where are you? In the back over here? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Vladimir Kolicha, and I have a question for the representative. He said that if we raise the minimum wage, we would have a rise in aggregate spending. There's a study by the Federal Reserve of St. Louis that found that in the long run, there actually is an aggregate increase in demand. There's a short-run increase of about 0.3%. But in the long run, there is no increase. So where is your evidence that in Oregon, this was they talked about nationwide. Where's your evidence that in Oregon, this would actually happen?
Representative Knopf?
I'd be curious to see that study. The study that I'm familiar with was done by the Oregon Center for Public Policy. They said it would raising the minimum wage in this state. They looked at increasing it to, I think they looked at 15, all right, would put $2 billion more into our economy. So here's the simple math, right? If you go from $9.25 an hour to $13.50 an hour, you go from $19,200 a year to $28,000 a year. That's an $8,800 increase in a person's yearly earnings, all right? Now you multiply that by over 500,000 workers who are making minimum wage or close to it or along that continuum, that's going to be more money in their pockets, and they're going to spend it. People who earn very low wages are not socking their wages away in savings accounts. They're spending it, they're paying their bills, and there's just, I believe in a demand-based economy. And if they have that money, they're going to spend it, and we're going to see the benefits of that. So I guess I disagree with the Federal Reserve study.
Yeah. We'll give you a chance to jump in there.
The big issue is whether or not $15 an hour will draw people out of poverty. Let's consider that for a moment. The fact that with the increase in wages, people will start losing benefits. And at $13 an hour, the net income for individuals to go from $9.25 to, say, $13.10, they lose in net income with their subsidies beginning to lower. They lose $9 a month. $9 a month. They don't benefit. And we have the same thing with $15. Their net income is at $43. Net. And there's no safety net. And the thing that if we're going to talk about ending poverty, which is the question I would submit to this group that we should be focusing on, we have the same percentage of people making minimum wage as we did 15 years ago. We have not solved a thing with the annual increases. So I think we need to be solving the poverty problem.
Anytime we throw numbers around, I want to get our economist in here, Dr. Witowski, and talk about some of that.
Well, you know, what Jeff is saying is correct. You know, as your wages go up, there will be probably certain government benefits that you may lose because you're at now at a higher income. Things like even your tax deductions on your federal earned income tax credit would be lower. The businesses also have payroll taxes that rise. So, you know, but at the same token, given that, I think still there is a view that overall personal incomes would be higher on net, even though we may have some unemployment increase because of that. The Federal Reserve study is probably saying that, well, once you have this rise coming up, if you have a net increase in personal incomes, you'll probably have a net increase in consumption. That is a temporary rise, and then you're at a new level. So it doesn't continue to keep going up, but you do have this one bump up that happens. Anyways, we'll leave it at that.
Okay, let's do that. In fact, we hold on for just a moment because I want to make sure we get back to our media panel. You guys still ready to go over here? Let's go back to Suzanne Stevens, Portland Business Journal. You will ask the question, start our next segment. Jeff Stone, you will respond to this one. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Thanks, Steve. So Oregon's economy right now is strengthening. We've been on a bit of a roll. It's been a slow, steady climb, and I think Tom, you and other economists are saying that that's going to continue. I'm curious how big a factor you think the current economy will play in any minimum wage debate in Salem, and also is there a risk that raising the minimum wage now or even beginning that gradual increase now when the economy is strong could set Oregon up for a harder fall when another downturn comes, and we all know it will come, unfortunately?
Good question, Jeff.
Well, I am concerned about long-term job loss. There might be an increase with employment, but I do worry about the strength of the economy long-term. And the fact of what we want to try to do is make sure that small employers are able to hire employees. They're on the same side of the coin. Employees need employers, employers need employees. We compete for market, and sometimes we're able to set price, sometimes we're not able to set price. So I worry about the unintended consequence of an increase in the minimum wage when it's not drawing people out of poverty. It creates job loss, and it unsettles the small employer who is the backbone of this Oregon economy.
So on this, I actually respectfully disagree with Jeff. So we've raised the minimum wage in this state 3 times. Once the legislature did in the late 80s, and then we did it by initiative 2 different times in the last decade. And all 3 of those times, we saw an increase in the economy in terms of our job growth, in terms of money that was in the economy. There was no negative impact to our state's economic growth as a result of raising the minimum wage, all 3 of those times. The business cycle is what it is, all right? Recessions come and go. The housing market is what did the last recession in 2007, and that had nothing to do with what the minimum wage was in the state of Oregon.
Okay, yes, definitely the economy is going fairly strong right now, and you're going to see wages starting to rise up just naturally based on the demand that's out there, the amount of labor force that's available. Wages are going to start going up. But the other part is that the minimum wage here, its purchasing power is about the same today as it was in the 1970s. So almost no change over this time. And given the numbers we're talking about, somewhere about 5.7% of the labor force, working labor force in Oregon, probably raising it up is not going to throw an economy off track.
Lisa Dunn, you have the next question from PSU Vanguard, and Representative Nosh, you will be responding first. So Lisa, go ahead.
Thank you. So low-wage workers are disproportionately women and people of color. A study released by the University of Oregon's Labor Education and Research Center just stated that 60% of low-wage workers are women, 20% of people are of color. So how do you propose reducing the wage disparity with respect to gender and race if either it doesn't pass legislature or ballot measures, or in regard to Mr. Stone, you don't want to raise the minimum wage?
Well, I think you made my point for why we need to raise the minimum wage, right? If you are pigeonholed in occupations that typically pay a lower wage, all right, if we don't create some pressure to raise those wages by legislating it or by doing it the ballot, then they're going to continue to be trapped in low-wage jobs and not be able to earn more money. So I think we have to look at this very seriously. If we want to do things to benefit women who are proportionally in some of these lower wage occupations and people of color, raising the minimum wage is exactly the right way to go. Jeff Hill?
One of the biggest barriers, I think, for women and people of color is education, and we need to up the education. No, I'm not the bad guy here.
You are. Just let me have a say first.
84% of the people who are making minimum wage do not complete a college degree. And there are opportunities within the community college ranks to try to get skills. I think we need to look at training, we need to look at education, we need to look at ways to pull this community of people to rise up and get out of this cycle of a minimum wage job.
Very quickly, the problems are bigger than just a low wage. You've got racism, you've got discrimination, you've got a lack of education. These are the bigger problems of trying to help these people. Now, if you can complement that with a raising of the minimum wage that can assist that would probably be good. But the crux of the problem is not the wage specifically. It's really the discrimination that's out there.
Okay, we'll leave the audience momentarily. I want to go to Jeff Mapes for another question. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, as it was mentioned earlier, there's two proposals that are being considered as possible ballot measures. One that would have would gradually go to $15 an hour throughout the state. The other one that would go to a lower level, $13.50, I think, and then allow localities to raise the wage beyond that. And I'd be interested in hearing the panel's thoughts on whether they think it makes sense to, in essence, allow some differential from community to community to take into account different costs of living there.
That's a question that's brought up a lot recently, the communities and the impact of that when it comes to minimum wage. Representative Mills, you want to jump on that one?
That's a very tough question because I support both those initiatives. But I think we all, and that's why $13.50, I think, was chosen as the number to get to statewide because that was a number that lifted most people into a place, if they were single, where they could be self-sufficient and not reliant on government, government benefits to make it. But clearly there are communities in our state that have higher costs of living, right? It is more expensive to live in Portland than it is to live in Coos Bay or LaGrande. And that's why there's a preemption piece in that, so that those communities have an opportunity to struggle and try to raise their minimum wage higher to something like 15 if they think that that's what they need to do to make it possible to be able to afford to live in that community. And so,
the community differential is the issue, Dr. Katowski. How do we address that?
Yeah, just going on the premise that if you're going to raise the minimum wage, should you have this? And I think definitely yes. There are, as Representative No said, there are definitely differences of cost of living in the different parts of our state. And the higher cost areas probably could have higher minimum wage options there in order to have a better purchasing power for people in the higher cost areas. And you generally have higher income people also living in those areas that can probably handle the higher prices of going out to eat and things like that.
Jeff, I'll get to you in just a second. I want to hit that audience right now. Chris Lionel, where are you, sir? What do you have?
Hi there, Jason Brandt with the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association. So a couple things I just want to have you think about, a couple statistics that I think are really important to the debate. So if I told you that for every $1 million in sales, the average restaurant earns $35,000, or for every hour an employee works, the average restaurant earns 60 cents, how would you respond to those two comments?
Who wants to start? Representative Mills, you want to jump in?
Well, that's the first I've ever heard of that. I mean, again, I fall back on, all right, if people have more money in their pockets, they're going to spend it in your establishments. People like to go out to eat. They like to participate in our state's robust craft beer industry. And if they have more money to spend they're going to show up in your establishments. So hopefully those numbers will go up.
Jeff?
I think there's a common misconception that revenue equals profit. And so I would submit to you that they do not. The nursery industry has a very narrow margin, and I think it's the same with the restaurant industry. That it's a very narrow margin. The price per plant that you can get that you sell into New Jersey is a number that is, you're a price taker, not a price maker. And so people will move. In a restaurant, if their prices get too high, they're going to move across the street. They might go from a Red Robin to a McDonald's. I mean, depending on what they can afford. No, but people will make choices with their dollars. So I think the Restaurant Association is correct here, that people equate revenue with profit, and that's just not how it is.
Small margins, the issue here, Dr. Katowski?
Well, if those numbers are correct, then I would say that just as I believe that there will be some job losses if we raise up the minimum wage, because if anyone has a very small margin, that is a tipping scale that possibly could either, they have to scale back. There's ways to do it. They scale back, either they have less employees, they do the tablets, as you were saying, to get rid of some of the labor. But at the same time, we don't know why that business may go out of business. You can have bad management is the reason for thin margins, and they're on the edge anyways, and anything that just bumps them up a little bit is going to put them out. So it really, that's the kind of information or so on, I think that needs more analysis, because I just, as the representative said, I have not heard of that type of very, very low margins for your industry.
Terrific audience questions tonight, by the way. Thank you for that. Maybe you've got another one right there.
Hi. You'll hold it? Okay. I just wanted to point out, because we're talking about fairness and equity, $15 an hour, we have men on the panel talking to women and people of color like we need to be talked to about how it is to deal with poverty. So I just think this is really Cypress. I've been a student at Portland State for 5+ years. I am a proud working class single parent of 18 years. Right? And I'm also have the privilege to stand here and speak on behalf of single moms who are working right now, making less than $15 an hour, who couldn't be here because of all the struggle that they deal with. So I had to write this out so I could stay tactful and on point. Especially to you in the middle, sir. I'm just saying, I'm going to be respectful. So here's the thing. Folks like me are really tired of people like you and the Koch brothers and other folks and corporations that pit not only small businesses, but working class people against each other. We're tired of being told, women and people of color especially, that raising the minimum wage, and I quote you, is a terrible way out of poverty. That is a slap in the face to all working class folks who make your wages for you that you hold on to. I do have a question. I'm going to finish up at this point. I just want everyone here and in the TV audience to know that when that is said about people like myself and people all across America, that is code for saying we just don't know how to handle our poverty wages well enough. And that is not a way to get out of poverty because we can't handle our wages. And that was actually also said by the president here at PSU when we had a budget crisis.
What's his name?
Wim Vivel. He said we didn't know how to manage our money and that was our problem while he's living on PSU's student money. My question is, when you're making these kind of judgments and pushing these facts around and making your kind of assessments, have you ever sat down and had a conversation with a woman or a person of color who makes $15 or less an hour and asked them what it's like to struggle, and do you care about that?
Yeah, I would assume you want to go first.
I'm kind of pointing to, so I will go first. I have talked with Arab American mother who has terrible time making ends meet. The elementary school that's right down from my home in Southwest Portland, 78% of those kids are free to reduce lunch. 78%. I worry about the fact that an increase in the minimum wage, those are federally set poverty levels. And I would say that as a business representative, we have it incumbent upon us to help solve this poverty problem. And I would submit that we would do it through a couple different ways. The earned income tax credit, having more child care tax credits, to help those who are impacted, the senior and adults with disabilities. I would say that we should raise the national minimum wage. So can I relate? I am not you, and I'm not pretending to be you, but I think that we need to work to get the system so we can end poverty, and we should do it together.
That was directed to you, so I'm going to go right back out to the audience. So many terrific questions, lots of hands up, and Chris Lytle, we have some right there.
Steve Buckstein, assuming facts actually do matter, then the initial question, Representative Gross referred to a study that the raising the minimum wage to say $15 in Oregon would pump $2 billion into the economy. Last I checked, Oregon or Portland or anywhere in the state can't print money, so that $2 billion had to come out of somebody's pocket, and it comes out of employers' pockets, many of whom in Oregon are small business owners. Coincidentally, they're the one group that will be exempt from minimum wage. When you start a business in Oregon and you struggle, many of these businesses aren't taking any salary for themselves. They're actually borrowing money, putting up their house as collateral, and you have to hire one person to grow their business. You're asking them to pay a level that is more than they're making, and it's also possibly more than that person can generate for the business without, again, more education and training. So I guess I'd like to hear from at least the other two panelists, and you can weigh in too, where that $2 billion comes from. Is there no negative impact, assuming businesses don't have a magic pot of money, which I think the economists would agree they don't. If you're taking it out of the businesses, that's money that could have grown their businesses and hired more people. So where do we get an extra $2 billion?
Where does the money come from is the question. Why don't we start with you, Dr. Petoskey, we'll make our way down to you, Representative Mills. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I have not seen that particular study. The concept here is that as you would raise up the minimum wage, you're saying where might that money come from? Well, that could be from higher prices, say at restaurants. People that come into the restaurant, where do they get the extra money to buy the meal that's at a higher price? At some point, it may be that they reduce their savings slightly in order to consume more, is one possibility where that money comes from. And then there's a multiplied effect. This is a cumulative effect of the money changing hands and being spent and respent, and can then be more than the initial spending that occurs when we get this sort of circular action going on. But the other part is, you know, if we look at Oregon and we're at $9.25 an hour, we have a fairly good job growth right now, although it's kind of bifurcated at the high end and it's somewhat at the low end. And the middle is not really growing much. But we've got a higher rate than a lot of other states, and we're in the top tier of job growth. So given that we already have this big differential, I'm not sure that raising up the minimum wage is going to be a big hit on us.
Representative Mills, the question from Steve Buckstein, where does the money come from? Well, it comes from a lot of different sources, right? It comes from the fact that now that I have more money to spend, I bring it into that business. It may come, in the case of some large employers, they may decide that they can reduce their already large profits or large salaries for various executives and pay their workers better. It's going to come from a variety of sources, right? But if you believe that the economy is demand-driven, which I do, which is that people who have money spend it, they create customers, they create jobs, the money's going to come, it's going to be generated from just having more business generated in the community. Just don't, you're going to have more customers.
I agree. I think that the goal should be more customers. I think it's making something, it's producing something. And you have the opportunity to try, small employers want to hire employees. They want to produce those products and services and have someone buy it. So on the supply side, I'm with you. I mean, I understand about how more money gets into the system, but I would agree that there is a cost and benefit analysis about how much people can grow. And what we want is to have more people up the wage scale, not just more at the bottom of the wage scale. So the patron saint of minimum wage, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, thought that the minimum wage was a place to start. And that your ability... It's a
living wage.
No, it's not a living wage.
Roosevelt.
No,
FDR said it was supposed to be a living wage.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that if you have the ability to make something of yourself, you are going to be able to rise and make more money.
Hold on just a second, folks, because I want to get some more of your questions out there. We have some folks at home wanting to weigh in as well. I want to move over to the social media desk. Steve Bennett, what are you hearing?
We're getting some good questions. Here's one tweeted to us from Aaron Power. I've heard some suggest a training versus permanent minimum wage. The panel's thoughts.
Training versus permanent minimum wage. You heard anything about that, Dr. Petoskey?
No, I've not. But I think the idea here is, and you know, we really do need a whole gambit of items to help us out of the problem of this stagnant wages, you know, for past almost since the 1970s, not much of an increase in wages at all. And so we need training programs to retrain people. We need better education access because the cost of education has got so high. We need increases in the earned income tax credits. And I think possibly, you know, raising the minimum wage is a compliment, but it's not going to be the cure-all. We need all these other things to help solve these big, very tough problems.
I'll go back to this terrific audience out there. Nate Baker, you've got someone standing by right now. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Olivia Pace, and I'm with the Portland State University Student Union. Before I ask my question, I just want to say I have the quote from Roosevelt right here. It says, "Throughout the industry, the change from starvation wages and starvation employment to living wages and sustained employment to the long-term an industrial covenant to which all employers shall subscribe." So that's the quote, just to let you know. You said the problem is not the wage, it's discrimination. I'm really concerned that you are oversimplifying the issue, so the issue with people of color living in poverty is discrimination. Do you not see people of color earning the minimum wage at a disproportionate rate as an issue of systemic racism? And if the answer for people of color is education, how do you propose we gain that education when we don't have enough money to earn it? And our universities are being run by capitalists tied to big corporations and big businesses who don't, like the people on the board of trustees of the school, who do not care about our education, they only care about profiting off of us. How do you propose that we pull ourselves up when people at our university don't care about us, and people like you, and people who run big businesses in this country don't care about giving us enough money to earn those resources to live and be functioning human beings?
That you claim I don't care, and I take offense
I quoted
to
what
that.
you said, it wasn't that
I really do care, and my caring comes on many levels. Now, what I mean is that discrimination is one of the causes of the low wages that women and people of color get relative to white males. And so, providing a higher wage, I don't know if that's going to change that, you know, differential. You'll have a higher wage, you'll be up, and you will have a more sustainable type of salary, but discrimination doesn't go away. So, you know, I want to fight both things.
Discrimination manifests itself in systemic racism. It's not about people being mean. It's about their discrimination manifesting itself in things like not earning enough money to go to college.
Well, yeah, but the cost of college is too much. We need to lower that. We need to have more federal programs to help people of low income to get to college, because otherwise we're gonna broaden this haves and have-nots, which is absolutely horrible for social stability in our country. And so there are some very serious problems we have to go after. That's, I care.
Important aspect of all this, no question about it. Chris Lyle, we have someone else over there.
Mic check!
Mic check!
We have some important news!
We have some important news!
Portland State University Administration has chosen not to provide all their workers with a living wage. This is not acceptable. Food service workers 15 now. Child care workers 15 now. Bookstore workers 15 now. Student health workers 15 now.
what just happened out there at all, or should we move on? Yeah, absolutely. Your next question, Chris, go ahead.
Eric Fruits, I don't know how to top that. It was really good. Mic check. I wanted to kind of rewind things a little bit and talk about the job impact, and I guess this question is more for Representative Nose. Going into the legislative session last year, I believe it's a nonpartisan group, the Legislative Revenue Office, circulated a memo. And that memo calculated what the impacts of raising the minimum wage would be on the state of Oregon. They found that a $2 increase in the minimum wage would reduce employment by 20,000 and would actually have a long-run negative impact on employment, on incomes. I saw that memo, which means you must have seen that memo. I'd be surprised if you didn't.
I gotta be honest with you, I don't remember that memo.
I'll show it to you.
So here's the memo that I remember. We had one of my peers asked about whether or not people would lose food stamps, Oregon Health Plan, TANF, and child care benefits. All right, that's the memo that I remember. It was very controversial. Well, it's the only part of the memo I remember. So it got a big splash in Oregonian. And so our work group and several other agencies looked at that, and we found that that memo was flawed. All right? That, first of all, if you make a living of any kind in this state, you don't qualify for TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which we used to call welfare. Okay? Food stamps has always been a program that you phased off of. Okay? So as you earned more, you took in less food stamps. Okay? The problem with child care benefits in this state for low-income people is that we don't provide enough of it. It's not a federal program. It's not an entitlement. You only get, we short the number of people that can actually qualify for that benefit. And then the last one is the Oregon Health Plan. There's a little bit of an issue there, okay? People who start to earn more money eventually could lose their Oregon Health Plan benefit. But the Affordable Health Care Act makes it possible to get a silver plan and to get your, I know this is, I'm going long, this is important, to get your copay subsidized and your premium subsidized. And if we really wanted to do right by that, if we didn't think that was good enough, the state could invest in another part of the Oregon Health Plan and fund basic health and make it possible for low-wage workers to basically get on the Oregon Health Plan up to 185% of the poverty level. So the bottom line for me is this, okay? All work has value and dignity, okay? And we need to address poverty, we need to address racism and sexism, okay? But we also need to make sure that all work has value, a minimum level of value that allows a person to be able to pay their bills and enjoy some of the benefits of life, like going to a movie and going out to eat once in a while.
We've been agenda for quite some time, but go ahead, Nate, for now.
Hi, my name is David Carlson. This is for Jeff. Now that we've taken care of the FDR quote here, we know that it's a living wage, not a beginning wage. With 37% of working Oregonians out of 202 million people, that's roughly like 740,000 people making less than $15 an hour, you claim that we need to be looking at poverty and how to deal with that. Well, what other way, besides raising the minimum wage, will impact the most amount of Oregonians the quickest way? Because right now there are people living off of 2 meals a day, not being able to have transportation to work. What else is going to work? Because I don't know. I've been studying for a while.
No, and I appreciate the question. The biggest dollar amount that can get into people's pockets is a change in their earned income tax credit.
Earned income, because our work is being subsidized right now, okay? I have 5 years experience, I have 5 years of management experience, 10 years in the service industry, okay? 4 years specifically pizza, and I have the hardest trouble making more than $10 an hour right now, okay? Does my experience not equate to a living wage right now? Yeah.
The University of Wisconsin has a 5-point plan about how to reduce poverty by 50%. That includes helping people with minimum wage jobs that are unemployed or underemployed, raising the federal minimum wage, increasing and reforming the earned income tax credit, helping with child care tax credits, and helping those who are disabled and adults, seniors and adults with disabilities, to help with that tax program. The fact is that we need to solve this problem together. Representative Nose, Dr. Patowski, and myself all are just points of view on a big scale of how to get at this issue.
I don't want to cut you off. I promised the gentleman in the front row he'd have a voice, and go ahead, sir.
My name is Ramon Ramirez. I'm president of the Oregon And I want to say that the most important workforce in America today are the farm workers, because you all ate today, right? Yet our wages are the lowest in America. The lowest in America, averaging $9,000 to $12,000 a year. And there's talks about exempting farm workers from making minimum wage. That's a shame. That is a shame. You know, we talk about poverty. How do we get farm workers out of poverty? We raise the wages. That's what we raise the wages. Because we don't get any benefits. We don't have health care. We don't have a retirement plan. We don't have anything. The only thing that a farm worker takes home, is a wage. $9.25, and that's not enough. And even when workers start complaining, I brought 6 workers. These 6 workers worked 11 years picking mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, high-end mushrooms, and asked for a 20-cent an hour raise and was fired this Sunday. All of them were fired. So we gotta, if we want to get workers out of poverty, we gotta pay a wage, right? Let me just tell you a little story about addressing education.
We have 30 seconds left in the entire program.
Okay.
As soon as we get off the air, we'll talk about it. So hang on just one moment. We want to thank all the folks watching. We want to thank the audience. I want to thank PSU. They only give us 1 hour to be on TV, and that's it, and they just push us off. So I hope you all had the opportunity that you wanted to have. We appreciate you coming. It was certainly a lively discussion from all you folks and you folks in the audience as well. Now, if these folks don't mind sticking around for a few minutes and answering your questions, they say they'll stick around.
Actually, I just want to make a statement that you, I want to make sure I call you by name. Jeff Stone. Mine will just take a minute. Jeff Stone. Okay. You did say that women are paid so low and that they, because of their lack of education, something to the effect of she had brought up.
He said that. He said that.
That women are underpaid because of their lack of education. I think you cited that 94% of people
that was paternalistic.
Subsidies are uneducated or undereducated. But I wanted you to know that actually more women have bachelorette degrees than men. Okay. Secondly, can we have a little closer?
Can I
the
finish?
other thing is that there's so much focus on the restaurant business and retail businesses that pay so low. But I work in healthcare, and healthcare workers are paid barely above minimum wage. And those are the people that are out there taking care of your grandma and your grandpa, and they're wiping your friends when they get an infection and they have C. diff at the hospital. And they're getting paid so little that they go home at the end of a long day and they can't even afford food. They can't afford to live in a safe neighborhood. That's not right. And here you look so nice. So my question to you is, are you willing to live on your improved $10.80 an hour for 1 month?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
No.
You said no.
It's good for other people, but not you.
Do you think it's possible?
As we promised, folks, I want to give this gentleman a chance to finish up his statement.
Yeah, all right.
They weren't asking for 15 an hour. They weren't even asking for $13.50 an hour. They were asking for 20 cents. They're making $9.30 an hour. That's how much they're making. Picking high-end mushrooms. They were asking for a 20-cent increase and got fired on Sunday. And we talk about ending poverty. Farm workers, the only thing they make is a wage, right? And we gotta correct historical wrongdoing to America's farm workers. Starting from the African Americans, the reason why farm workers are excluded from the National Labor Relations Act was because when the New Deal got brokered under the Franklin D. Roosevelt administration, the majority of farm workers were African Americans. That's why they were excluded. Now, it's the majority are Latinos. But I want to make a point in terms of how do we deal with the poverty. What we found in Woodburn is that when you increase wages and you stabilize people's employment and housing, we built some of the best farm worker housing in Woodburn. That it's the farm worker union has contributed to that development. What we found is that we went in the last 10 years in Woodburn from having the highest dropout rate in our state to having one of the highest graduation rates in just 10 years. And the reason why is because farm workers that live in our housing are get paid a little bit more, their incomes are stabilized, their housing is stabilized, and they're able to concentrate more time to their children. And that's why we have the highest graduation rate in the state of Oregon. Because and that's the way we end poverty. But it has to do with ending poverty wages. And the way we do that is by raising the minimum wage to 15 an hour.
Have to go. A question you'd like to ask of these folks who stuck around? Yes, in the far back. Can we get a microphone back there, Nate? Thank you.
I have a question about the ripple effect. I think that a lot of the time, people are concerned if they're making a little bit over the proposed new minimum wage. Like, if you're making over $15 an hour, it isn't going to do you any good. You already got an education, and you'd just be making the same as everyone else. However, do you think that Oregon employers would have to pay those employees that are making a little bit more than the proposed new minimum wage an additional higher wage in order to stay competitive?
Representative?
I do think they would have to. I mean, you know, that's the whole theory, right? You know, and again, we've raised the minimum wage in this state 3 different times, all right, pretty significantly, and we didn't, the economy kept going, right? Like, we had recessions because of the business cycle and because of what happened in the housing market, not because the state of Oregon raised the minimum wage on 3 different occasions, right? And so, yeah, I mean, if you want to, you know, if you want to have a career ladder, if you want to say that, you know, those wages will hopefully go up as well. Yes, right in the middle.
Hi, this is directed at Jeff. Oh, good. Hi, so I've noticed that it's really easy to talk about these issues that don't affect y'all at all in a very abstract way because you're very distanced from the actual effects of poverty.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you already established that you wouldn't want to live on $10.80 an hour. So my question is, how much do you make a year?
Why you make that much too? All the hard work.
Yeah, you won't answer that.
Personal information from that.
Steve, they're passing judgment on those of us who make less than them and thinking they have all the answers for us, and that's why it's relevant. If they want us to take them seriously, they need to answer the question and not be shamed.
I'm leaving it up to them. I'm just moderating this. I'm leaving it up to them. They can respond to that. Can we get your way in the front row here, folks? Can we get a microphone over here? I laid it out. I don't think they want to answer that question.
Why not?
Deb with Main Street Alliance. Recently there was a report published by Voices of Main Street. We actually interviewed over 1,200 business owners across the country in 9 states, and 77% of those business owners have less than 25 employees. I would ask you, those businesses that you're speaking of, how many employees do they have, and how can you call them small business?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, thank you for the question. Oftentimes, this debate gets, the Walmart example gets thrown out, and Walmart can withstand any raise of the minimum wage because they can survive a nuclear winter. So let's be serious about, that's not the Oregon employer. A lot of Oregon employers have under 50, and a lot of my growers, a lot of the people that I work for, have under 20 employees.
So we know we represent 3,000 business owners across Oregon, and 68% of our members are under 25 employees, and we believe in raising the wage. So I just
want to know who you're speaking of, because it's not our business. Economist about the percentages of big business and what that is compared to small business.
In Oregon, like for our economy as a whole.
Oh, so you actually have a lot more small businesses, but employee-wise, it's a smaller number than you have for the larger employees.
So that would technically be more money in more people's pockets from the larger employees, right? Larger employers, right? So if more large corporations have more employees and they were able to carry the
brunt of raising the wage, wouldn't that technically put more money in more people's pockets from corporations that were able to carry that weight?
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
Mathematically speaking.
Yes.
You just said that, right?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
We have time for one more question. Portland State's going to take this room back from us, so we need one more over here on the left side.
Hi, my name's Irene, and I'm a Portland State student. I'm also a parent and been a single parent most of my life. I'm
Let's hear it for single moms.
Yes, and I've done it for a long time, but I'm now an employer in the hospitality industry, the bar, it's a neighborhood bar. And we have wonderful employees. I love our employees, they're great, they work hard. But to be honest, if this goes through, I can't keep them all.
Right. They should be in poverty,
I
of course.
I wish I could. And we can't keep giving them paid vacations. We can't keep paying half their Kaiser. I wish I could, because I know what it's like to struggle.
I'll just push for
But-
universal health care.
But, yeah, well, and if we switch to the Obamacare program, they just told us our plan would go up 64%, but with Kaiser, it's only 14%. What we're gonna try and hold on to. But honestly, we can't make it at 15 an hour. I wish we could. We are small. We'll do what we can. But what am I gonna tell those people that I can't keep? They're not gonna make that 15 an hour. Some people will. We'll stay open, but we can't do it, honestly. So what I want to ask is, and I have a son who just got his first job at Dairy Queen, and it's minimum wage, and he's really excited. What representative knows, how are you going to address the absence of entry-level jobs, starting wages? Because I used to take people in and train them how to be bartenders. I can't do that. I gotta have the best, because if I gotta pay 15 an hour and I can only have one person on, not two, or two and not three, I gotta have the best. I can't train somebody. What do I do?
Join the working class. Shut down.
Part of what we have to remember is that right now the minimum wage, the average minimum wage worker is 35, right? So we're going to have more of that, frankly. We're going to have to figure this out, right? Because people are, I don't support a training wage, all right? So I'll give you a personal story, okay? So my daughter got her first job last year as well, all right? She's 16. She worked alongside several 20-year-olds providing respite care at an autism camp. So parents who have children that have autism, they send their kids to this camp for 6 hours a day. And she was basically, you know, it was her job to make sure that her kid, and it's like one counselor per child, because these are kids with autism, stayed with the group, didn't bite people, ate her lunch, participated in programs. She did the same new job as a 20-something college student, all right? They were both new, neither of them had ever done this job before. And I don't know how you would justify having the 16-year-old make less than the 20-year-old when both of them were new in the role, doing the job the same way for the first time. And so it's complicated. I mean, we're going to have to figure that out because even people when they're training and learning, they're working, right? And so it's not going to be easy. We're going to have to figure that out.
There's still lots to talk about, obviously, with this issue. We'll be discussing for a long, long time, folks. Again, Portland State needs the room back, so we're going to shut it down.
We already took it back.
Thank you very much.